Greetings, folks, and welcome to another DIYary. I haven't done one of these in a little while, and this is our plant stand that we've had out in the back for a while. And unfortunately, the feet, well, let's see if I can sort of show you. We've got caps on some of them, but most of the caps, I'll get that back in the light for you. Most of the caps are split, so not really doing a whole lot of protecting. And the idea is ultimately if that isn't there, then the water can go down that tube and end up at the bottom. And when it does, you end up with rust, kind of like that. And on that corner, it's particularly bad. So I'm going to see if I can't figure out how to extend these, fix the rot, and get it to stand up straight. And then while I'm at it, just sand it down and refinish the whole thing. So it'll look brand spanking new, and we're going to try and do it with a minimum of parts that we have to go out and get. So it's the shelter at home, fix something, and just have a much nicer house when you come out of it. So first thing I'm going to do is a little exploring, and then I'll come back. Okay, this is not the finished product. It's just a proof of concept. My thinking after I kind of looked at it and realized that I had a piece of pipe, half-inch PVC pipe, that just seemed to be so close to the diameter of the actual tubing that this is built with. And I thought, well, I can get a coupler. And now this is on a good one here. There's going to be more work down at the other end where we've got the rot on that one leg. And I started sanding, and I will say we happen to have some old belt sander belts, and this one had broken but was still in pretty good condition, so I've ripped it down using it kind of like emery cloth and basically managed to wrap it around kind of like that and then just go back and forth. Actually put my knee up against it and pulled with both hands. I'm doing this one-handed with the camera now. But that's what I did with that on this end. That's why you can see it's shiny there. And then once I did that, I tried to taper it down just a little bit. And yeah, granted, not everybody has the same tools around the house, but this is the old Harbor Freight Drill Master, like $10 kit, which comes with the rotary tool, several collets, and a bunch of different parts, which I've now put in one of these little tubs. And that's just the sanding wheel. So I just tapered it with the sanding wheel, and then when this part here wouldn't quite fit, let me see if I can get that in focus. Sorry, I'm kind of in the shade, which kind of messes with it a little. I basically kind of routed out the inside of it just enough to be able to get it to fit over. So yeah, I'm going to have to modify the pieces to get it to work, but ultimately I can do that down at the other end. There it is, focused, and hopefully that will work. I'm going to have to take some careful measurements. Tip for anybody that has the same problem, I don't know how many of you there are, but this is the next shelf up here, and so because I want it to stand up straight, I want it to be square. That means I want this leg from this shelf all the way to the end. I want all four of these legs to have the same measurement from the shelf, either the top of the shelf or the bottom of the shelf, depending on how you measure it, but just be consistent from the top of the shelf down to the bottom of the leg. I want that measurement to always be the same on all four of these legs. And obviously this one is mangled. I measured, it's out by about 1.25 inches. Now I'm not sure how long the coupler is, but if it's more than 1.25 inches, I'll have to figure out what to do. I'm going to have to cut back anyway, because I got to cut the rotted piece off. And I mean, it's starting to rot here too, so I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do with that. I might end up, yeah, I see it's focusing on the ground. I might end up just putting the cap on there and hoping for the best. And then so they're all going to have a cap in addition. So it's some figuring to do, but now I got to do some tests just to see how easy this metal is going to be to work with before I take the actual hacksaw to it. So we'll see what we come up with. Okay, so here's what we've got. We got a bunch of feet that have been sanded down to within an inch of their life. I've done all 4, and the really bad one is now down on this side just because I've repositioned things. And my original assumption that going from that shelf down to the end would be the same on all 4 is not correct. I need to take measurements because the shelves were not welded on perfectly level. So I need to figure out how to maybe make a mark somewhere that I can use as a reference to make sure that everything's going to be square and level when I'm done. But what I've also figured out is I can file down and kind of taper it, and I can take one of those caps and kind of dig out the inside of the cap with my little rotary tool, which, by the way, I burned out the power supply on. Thankfully it was power supply, not the tool itself. I had another power supply. I just hooked it up and went back to work. Actually, and not one of those supplies. It was a completely different supply. That supply is like a 1/2 amp. I've put on big old wall wart. It's like 2.5 amps. So, or at least over 2 amps. And it just came right roaring back to life, and it doesn't cut out like it used to. Apparently the power supply is designed so that when it starts to draw too much power, it shuts itself off temporarily. Well, this time I just went too far and fried it. So anyway, I'm going to have to pull a line. I'm going to have to figure out the leveling, and then I'll go from there. But basically the next step is for me to take a bunch of measurements, write it all down, and I go sit down and figure out my plan of attack. So we'll pick this up again tomorrow. Welcome back. It's the next day. I've kind of set up the tripod. I figured my battery's almost dead, but I got about an hour to work on this today, and then I'm going to have to come back at it tomorrow. I'm hoping I can get most of the repair work done, but what I've done is I've run out to Harbor Freight, and I got the 105 piece. I'm hoping that's in frame because I'm not looking at the camera while I'm doing it. 105 piece set for the rotary tool, and so I want to try the wire brush to see if I can't clear out the insides where there's basically the rust is built up inside here. I want to go back at least a little bit and trying to relieve some of that. So let's see what a little too big. Alright, there's other options. I didn't need the whole kit, but I bought the kit because, let's see if that'll fit now. Alright, we'll go with the next size down. Actually, what about this one here? Yep, that'll get in there. Didn't need the whole kit, but there's a few pieces that are good in the kit. And actually the main thing I wanted, because yesterday I successfully did a bunch of carving with the sanding drums, and this had like, I don't know, half a dozen of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, that's right. When I looked at the list, it's like half of them are heavy grit and the other half are fine grit. So, but there's this stone thing here. I forget exactly what you call it. It's the reddish stone. Let me give that a shot. Oh, goody! Alright, I forgot to tighten it up, or I got the wrong size collet. Let's try that again. And there's definitely some debris on there, and it was working, and I forgot to grab the goggles I just bought, but let's just give it another quick shot. I can feel it coming loose. I think I have the wrong size collet, so I'll have to take care of that, and I'll reposition the camera, and I'll come back to after a little bit of experimenting. Alright. Kind of hard to tell. probably going to end up cutting part of it, but I just wanted to do that to be able to clean these out. Ultimately, there is a game plan here. After taking some measurements, what I ended up realizing, even though the shelves are not perfectly level and lined up, they're like maybe 1/8 of an inch off at the worst, say from front to the back, which is actually a fair amount. But I mean, if you think about it, you know, some welder is putting this thing together, they're mass producing them, they've got all the pieces, and they're just manufacturing these things by hand, and if they happen to get it not lined up absolutely perfectly, it's not the end of the world, 1/8 of an inch. So ultimately, I'm going to keep going with this. But what I was saying was, you know, all the measurements seem to be all cattywampus on me, and what I ended up deciding was, you know, if you look at the best looking leg, and you compare that to the worst, actually this is not the best, but I'm just pointing at a leg. This is the worst one, and if you consider best and worst, I might have to cut like 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch off of the best one, and then cut the worst one back as far as I can. I do have a pipe cutter, but the pipe cutter has a width to itself, and I have to consider that when I'm trying to cut, so I can only cut it down so much. In the end, when I put all the pieces together, this thing might be 1/4 of an inch taller. The other part of the project for the repair is taking those caps that I had and grinding out the inside of the cap. So that's kind of where I am on that. So I'm basically just going to get busy on putting as much of this together to get the repairs done as I can. That's my goal for today, is to finish the repairs, when tomorrow is going to be sanding this thing down and repainting the whole thing. And eventually we're going to have to find somewhere online, we're going to have to find caps to put on the tops of each of these poles. The caps we're putting on the bottom are thicker and not as decorative, but ultimately I'm going to paint them black, so they'll just hide. It'll just look like the structure, and then when you look at the white caps on the top, that's what you'll notice. There'll be a cap up here, I don't know if that's in frame, and more up on the top of the unit. So that's the game plan. We'll see how it all goes. Alright folks, so I've gotten through a good chunk of it, have had lunch, gone out to do a grocery run, and now I'm back to it. I've got 3 caps down there, and I got the other one which has the extension on it, and the game plan, I'm going to have to actually turn this over, is that shortest leg down there. I'm going to cut it back almost as far as I can get it cut back, and I'm going to try and use the pipe cutter to do it instead of a hacksaw, because I'll get a cleaner cut. Then I may have to grind some of the burrs off of it, and then I can try and put the longest leg on there. From there, I can take a measurement and figure out if I need to cut the other legs just a little bit to put these simple caps on the bottom so that they'll all be the same length from the bottom of that bottom shelf. I'm surprised this thing didn't fall over sooner, because ultimately it's like we've got one sort of good leg here, one sort of good leg there, and then this one, which is probably in the best shape. But I mean, that one was in really bad shape. I don't know how it didn't fall over. Anyway, let me see what I can do. Okay, I'm about to run out of battery, so I'm going to have to go up and get my charger, but I managed to cut it off, and if I can do this one-handed here, grab. This is the combined leg. You can see a little bit of blue on there. That's from the, I used something called Red Hot Blue, which is a PVC cement or glue, and connected these together so they shouldn't separate. And now I can push this on, and it is pretty much bottoming out under this shelf. I'm going to hit it with a hammer and get it a little bit more solid, but then I'll take a measurement and I'll try and match this leg and that leg and that leg. But I gotta go get a charger. Good morning folks, it's the next day, and I apologize, but I kind of finished up and didn't record. I was just kind of trying to get things done, and just didn't get to document it. But I will say that, oops, watch the fingers there. This went off remarkably well. I got that one done. It's not perfectly straight, but that's okay. It's glued together, and I cut that piece down to probably somewhere around 1/4 to 1/2 an inch, so there's not a huge amount of the leg, the original leg, but I got that on there. And then I went and started with, I think I started with the longest one, tried tapping a cap on there, hitting it with the hammer to bottom it out, and it just happened to match up. I got really lucky. Actually, no, it wasn't the longest one. I started with a shorter one, and one of them, basically I tapped them all on, hit them with a hammer, bottomed them out. They were almost perfect. One of them I had to back off a little bit. I had to take a large flathead screwdriver and a hammer and kind of push it back. But ultimately, let me show you what it looks like standing. Wow, I'm having to back up a fair ways to get the whole thing in shot, unless I actually decided to go vertical, which I don't really like vertical video. I'm a purist. Although I have shot vertical video just to take notes to myself, things like that, especially when I was taking the dimensions of the thing, trying to figure it out. But there you go, it's standing up level. I put a level on it. Yeah, each component's a little bit out of level. Yeah, maybe that's a better view. Let me see if I can do it this way. I end up getting so far away you can't really see it that well. So that's the thing. It's 6 feet tall, 72 inches to the top of the back posts. So actually just a little bit more than 6 feet. But overall, it's standing level. It's standing straight. If it's off a little bit in one direction, I mean, you put level on one shelf, it might be off a little in one direction. Put it on the next shelf, it's off in the other direction. So average, it's all level. Front to back, left to right. I'm really happy with that. So now the next task is sanding this sucker down to try and get, not to bare metal, but to get a nice even plane so that I can paint it and it'll look nice when it's done. And then we got to figure out what we're going to do as far as caps. Either getting caps like we have on the bottom, and maybe I can cut them down so they're not quite as tall, or we'll just keep shopping for decorative caps because they're getting hard to find. This is 1/2 inch inner diameter. Well, the caps down here are 1/2 inch PVC caps, Schedule 40 if anybody cares. So anyway, I'm going to start sanding. Okay, so it's been a couple of hours. I've been sanding. Don't know how well this is going to come through on video. I'm not quite done yet. But basically my goal is to smooth things out and kind of sharpen the edges a little. Not sharp like you can cut yourself, but just trying to get it so it looks straight. And I mean, get some of the paint drips and stuff off, just sanding them off so that when I repaint all of this, it'll all be one color, and I think it'll look a lot better. So if you kind of come down to this one, I think it might be a little bit clearer what all that looks like. Then we get down to the next one. This is the one I just did, and sort of for comparison, you can see how sort of messed up, forget the spider web, but you know, just how messy it kind of looks before the sanding. So that'll go away and it'll all look a little bit neater like this one here. So I don't know, I'm just trying to make it look better. It's not in perfect condition, obviously. The caps kind of give that away, but if I paint, ultimately I'm thinking I'm going to take those caps, I'm going to like tape them about halfway down and paint around, and hopefully it won't drip and be a problem, and then we'll have just a little bit of white showing at the bottom instead of being 100% black. And if that works, then for the caps that we put on here, I could use the same caps, just do the same thing, kind of grind them out with the rotary tool so that they'll actually fit on there. and then tape them off and paint them so that they don't look as quite as thick and chunky as they do right now. So I'll give that a shot, but I think I'm going to wrap up the video for today, finish sanding, and tomorrow we'll attack the paint. Okay, good morning. It's a new day. I've already done some work, clearing, cutting some branches off a tree in the backyard, but back to this project. I pretty much finished all the sanding. I didn't record, I don't think I recorded anything at the end of the day, but it has cleaned up nicely. It just didn't, it may be hard to see because it's all kind of gray and there's bits of bare metal here and there, but I mean it's been sanded to within an inch of its life, short of actually like sandblasting it down to bare metal and all of that. I even spotted, yeah, down here, I don't know, yeah, you might be able to see the hole in there. So there's that, which isn't perfect, but I mean, once this is painted, it's going to give it a couple more years before we have to figure out, you know, anything on it. I think the game plan now is, since I've got a lot of sawdust or sanding dust on there, I'm going to have to wipe it all down. Basically just a clean rag and a bucket of water and toss the water every so often until I can get through the whole thing and I'm not pulling any more dust off of it. That should make it clean enough. It's not quite that warm right now. This is it's probably around 70-ish right now. But hopefully, you know, if I start top down, then by the time I'm done, the top will be dry and I can go and spot prime a few spots and then come back and actually start painting. Now, you might have spotted just as I was moving around, I said something stupid last night. I said, oh, this was kind of cathartic going through all of that sanding. So they pulled out another one. So I think they're expecting me to do this one. But realistically, once I'm done with the painting with this, I think that's it for me for today. And then the next couple of days are going to get really hot. So I don't know that I'm going to get back out. Plus, I actually have client work to do. I do data cleaning and website database stuff for websites, and so I've got some cleaning to do on one particular website. But, you know, there we go. That's what we're working on, and I'm going to get going. Okay, priming is done. It's just a light coat, just trying to cover the more obvious bare metal areas and kind of do a little bit of filling up along the front here because that's going to be one of the most visible surfaces, so you can see it's kind of got an orange peely kind of texture to it. I kind of wanted to smooth it out a little bit, so using the primer kind of as a little bit of a filler. You can kind of see down there, and then the tops of the pipes. Oops, I'm kind of losing my sense of direction here. The tops of the pipes they were all sanded down because I'm going to put caps on there, and I just wanted to get the excess paint off, but then I got to put a thin coat of primer just to cover. And then, and it may not be so obvious, but I'll just show you this one foot, and I'll show you a still. I taped them off. The plan here, I'm hoping it'll work, is I taped off the bottom half of each one of these, and then the bottom half over there. So the idea is I'm hoping that that will allow me to keep the bottom half of a white plastic cap, and it'll look like it's just a thinner cap, so it'll look more decorative. So the rest of it I'll just paint black over it, and then later I'll peel off the paint. So we'll see what happens. Onto the black paint. Alright, well, the sun is out and the painting is finally done. It has taken me, again, like a few hours just because of all the scroll work and everything, trying to get in there. But I think it's looking pretty good. I did paint down, it looks like I painted all the way down to the bottom, but actually there's some tape down there, so we're going to see after I give it a little time to dry and I pull the tape off whether we've got white caps down there or if I'm going to have to touch up the very bottom of the thing. But we'll see. I'm going to leave it out here. I'm going to go clean up a bit, and then I guess I'll have to come back and reevaluate and maybe quit for the day finally. And then there's this beast to think about. I think I'm just going to put that on the side. Anyway, I think that's it. Thanks for sticking around, and this is this project done.